Mein heutiger Gast braucht keine Vorstellung. Er ist einer der ganz großen Stars aus Hollywood. Aber damit nicht genug. Richard GIR ist auch seit Jahrzehnten praktizierender Buddhist und Freund des Dalai-Lama. Er ist aktuell in Zürich, um seinen neuen Film vorzustellen, der jetzt in den Kinos anläuft. Herzlich willkommen, Herr GIR. Eine Freude, dass Sie bei uns sind.
Well, thank you, Olivia. I'm very happy to be here. We function from the idea of ourselves, not the empirical reality of ourselves, but just the idea of ourselves and others. So this kind of self-cherishing conceptual framework that we view the universe disallows us from ever seeing anything truthfully and clearly and spontaneously, with freshness, with joy, the first time, like a child. Well, the child is a first time. You can see it. And a child experiences the world. It's the first time. But we lose that ability because we become clouded with concepts. I think I was going through a very normal period of existential crisis, which I'm sure you did too. Late teenager, early 20s. The world is quite different than what I had been told or even what I imagined.
Was hatten Sie sich denn erwartet?
That things are concrete. And they are stable. And what is will always be. And I am and I will always be. That there's things have a knowability. And you find out that it's not that way. The universe doesn't function that way. There's no center to the universe. It's constantly changing. It's completely impermanent. And this idea of knowing the world is just a snapshot. It's a momentary snapshot. It's the same with the self. There's a momentary knowing of the self as a concept, as an illusory experience. But it's an infinite number of snapshots. It's like a movie. A movie is 24 frames a second. There's an illusion that it's a movement that's real. But it's 24 still shots. And because of the way our brains work and the way our antenna works, we see movement, we see reality. When there's nothing there, it's light and shadow on a screen. And even on television now, it's pixels. There's nothing really there, but it stimulates the imagination in thinking, and it's the thought process is really the dangerous part of what we are as human beings. We think that we see things in a way that this outside world, this Claudia sitting in front of me, Olivia sitting in front of me now, is really there from her own side. But there's a moment of interaction here that creates a reality that is independent of the idea you have of yourself or of me.
Wie hat Ihnen das denn aus dieser Krise herausgeholfen, das zu sehen und zu verstehen?
Well, that everything's changeable. You're not stuck. In any moment, you're not stuck.
Aber das kann ja auch belastend sein, dass nichts greifbar ist,
well,
dass
it's
nichts
a
haltbar ist.
responsibility, not a burden. It's a responsibility to know yourself, to know your mind, to know your heart. And in that process, this idea of the self, which seems so primitively real, in fact, is somewhat of a hallucination, like a dream. Like a dream. It's not a dream, but it's like a dream. I understand intellectually many of these concepts. Someone like the Dalai Lama or the great yogis, it's not a conceptual understanding, it's a deep knowing. It's not about thought. It's a complete awareness, consciousness, knowing. And I don't have that.
Werden Sie das erreichen? Ist das ein Ziel von Ihnen?
Oh, hopefully, yeah. If I'm responsible enough and I work hard enough. The way the Dalai Lama always talks, it's possible. But the Dalai Lama says, you know, people come to the Dalai Lama, and I came to the Dalai Lama the first time, and I know there was a side of me, highly romantic, that thought the Dalai Lama was going to go, and all the pain would go away, all the suffering, all the problems gone. But His Holiness is very clear. He says, look, we all have the ability, the possibility of that happening, but you have to do the work. All religion, but I think the religion of my parents was very much about helping your neighbors.
Genau, das ist ein zentrales Anliegen der evangelisch-methodistischen Kirche, nebst dem
But I think
Evangelium.
that's central to all religions. I don't think you can find a religion that doesn't say, be a kind, good person. I think that's a basis of all religions. I think they start to split when the wisdom aspect is engaged. And this is the scientific point of view, which really looks at the nature of reality, the nature of mind itself, nature of consciousness, nature of awareness, and starts to pull apart many of the givens of our world. Like we started the conversation, the given that, of course, Richard Gere, I live within this boundary, within the shell. And Olivia lives within her shell. She's there. And it's separate.
Aber was also verbindet uns? Und was verbindet uns noch nebst als Menschen, auch mit unserem Stuhl?
If you think of us as we're these fingers that look like they're separate, right? You look at the tips. But where do they go? They go back into the hand. It's like the mind itself, the mind of vast consciousness, clear light, bliss, and there's many ways of talking about it, but those are conceptual. But these realities that we experience are coming from this deep place of the nature of mind itself. They don't come from nothing. It's a cause and effect, but it's generated from this vast creative energy that creates universes and creates the idea of a separate self. Well, I think creativity has a connection to wisdom in a way, because it's really not thinking. It's almost the opposite of thinking. It's removing the idea of the self, and then this other energy emerges. I mean, an actor, I remember my first conversation I had with the Dalai Lama, he asked what I did for a living. He had no idea who I was, which is fine with me. I didn't want to be the actor there. And his brother, who spoke English, and he said, he's an actor. And he said, oh. You know, so we had a connection there, and he said, well, talk to me about acting. And I explained a process of becoming another character. And he talked to his brother, and he says, it sounds like Tantra.
Yeah.
So, and there is a similarity, is that I break down the idea of Richard to be able to play a character. The character isn't completely different than me. It's an outgrowth of me. And it's a selective version of me and the kind of collective consciousness of human beings. And you plug that into storytelling. And that's what we all relate to, is storytelling. Storytelling and music are universal.
Sie haben sich ja auch für Philosophie interessiert, schon als Jugendlicher. Sie haben 2 Jahre Philosophie studiert. Was war damals der ausschlaggebende Punkt, dass Sie Philosophie studiert haben?
I always wanted to know what reality was.
Das hat Sie
What is
umgetrieben.
this that I'm experiencing? It seems like it's a mental process to me. I don't really trust that the world is what it appears to be. And yeah, I didn't know what I was going to be. I went to college, I didn't know what I was going to do. And so yeah, I was taking there was actually a philosopher named Bishop Berkeley, quite famous. And his thesis was subjective idealism.
Genau, esse est percipi, ist bei ihm. Sein ist Wahrnehmen, Wahrnehmung ist Sein.
And for philosophical terms, it's called subjective idealism, but it's a function of mind. In Tibetan Buddhism, that would be the mind-only school.
Yeah.
That's not the ultimate school, but it's pretty advanced. Pretty advanced. Now, if you can, the next evolution of that philosophy, prasangika, is that things exist, but they don't exist the way they appear to exist. So you can function in the world, in the dream world of reality, and be responsible within that. But at the same time, you're not personalizing it to the degree that we usually do. You're functioning from a universal place where you get the joke, that this is all a theater that we're involved in. but we are the writer, we're the director, we're the actors in our own movie. And then you see what the Buddha found, which was the whole crux of the problem here is self-cherishing, this idea of a self. From the viewpoint of the human brain, the self makes sense, sort of. From the universal sense of mind, which we can be in contact to, it makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't work. It only takes us into problems and suffering. I had been searching, so I was Zen Buddhism, I was with Sufis, I was with this one, with that one, I was reading.
Das haben Sie alles ausprobiert.
Reading. Well, I was reading everything and imagining. And I was living in New York, in Greenwich Village, and all things were available. And there was a bookshop, I remember, in Sheridan Square, and it was an all-night bookshop. So I would go there, I didn't have any money, so I used it like a library. I would just sit there in that section of philosophy and religion and pull down a book and read it, put it back in. Another one, and read it and put it back. Yeah. So, yeah, I was shopping. And so Zen Buddhism seemed to touch me. And I think at that point it was because it was the Protestant version of Buddhism. It was very straight.
Ja, genau. Stringent ist und ja.
It was strict and straight. It didn't have a lot of ritual around, although it does actually, but it seemed more simple and straightforward. And so I started a daily practice at that point. And they're very strict, so it was, you're going to do this or not, but if you're going to do it, you got to do it. And so I've been in a daily practice since I was 22 years old. 8 years later, I lose track, 9, 10 years later, I had an impulse to go to Tibet. And there were very few books from the Tibetan point of view. There were 3 books that were by Evans Wentz. I assume it was a German. Maybe Swiss German. Maybe. Oh. Maybe one of you.
Maybe it's me.
And he had written several books with a Tibetan. One was the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Yep. And he actually came up with that title, which isn't the Tibetan title. He just kind of made it up. And another one, which was the autobiography of an incredible yogi named Milarepa. And then another one on Dzogchen. And so anyhow, this romantic idea of Tibet came from there. And I didn't really know anything about the Dalai Lama.
Nachdem Sie all das erlebt haben.
So when I met His Holiness, it was very relaxed. His Holiness is not... He understands people coming to him and to break through kind of projections. So he makes things very simple and relaxed from the beginning. And I was struck, again, by his utter simplicity, but also his insight and his readiness to have a conversation. Not for him, but for me. What's going to work with you? What can I use that I know about you that I can give you something? I asked Naručivanje, basically, it was all in Tibetan, but I knew what he was saying. He said, so what does this guy do? Tell me about him. So he told him, I'm sure he said, he's an actor, and at that point I started making movies, and he was making movies. So he looked at me and he said, so you're an actor? And I said, yeah. And I went, oh God, I don't want to talk about acting. I came here to be blessed into enlightenment. I don't
Wie Sie es gesagt haben davor, ja.
So I said, I'm an actor. Yeah, I'm an actor. He said, so when you do this acting, when you're angry, are you really angry? And when you're sad, you're crying, are you really crying? And when you're laughing, are you really happy? And I went, in a way, I said, for it to be believable, I have to be feeling it. And he looked at me the longest time and he just started laughing. And it struck me, it's like, what I'm doing as an actor is what we are all doing in normal life, in our normal experience of the world. We appear to be doing it. We sell it in a way. You know, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm blah, blah, blah. But if you look just below the surface vibration, we're all here. The mind itself has no ripples in it. These things come out of it, and they, you know, you see like explosions on the sun, a sunspot, explosion. But the sun is stable in its temperature, and it's like, and our world is that. It just goes, and we have the illusion of the moment. Oh, I'm angry. Oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm crying. Oh, I'm laughing. It's just a fluctuation at the very surface level of our being. So that's the intellectual part of that. But he didn't, of course, say that. All he asked was the question. Are you really doing it? And of course, I'm not really doing it. I'm not really angry. I'm playing with anger as an actor. I use it to tell a story. You know, when the scene's over, you know, we hug, we kiss, cut, okay, blah, 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 we're all happy. It's an illusion. It's a game. It's a play. It's a theater. But we forget that we are the writer, the director, and the actor in our theater of our life.
Und Sie haben jetzt einen Film gemacht als Produzent. Da sagt er, the very purpose of our life is happiness, joyfulness. Was bedeutet das denn genau, happiness? Was bedeutet es auch für Sie?
To me, it's freedom. It's liberation. It's not being afraid of anything, of not really needing anything. You know, we're very busy doing things that we think have to be done and because we need things. You know, we may look at great yogis that are basically unknown. They're just living like mendicants on the street. They don't need anything. Brilliant beyond our wildest imagination, how they understand reality and the nature of their own minds. The only thing that makes them move at all is their motivation to help people. To remove all that hallucinogenic kind of craziness that we think is a part of being alive, being ourselves. But it can be removed. It can be removed. It's like dirt. It just can be removed and cleaned. And what's left is this kind of pristine consciousness awareness, what it's called clear light, or other names for it, but those are just concepts. But that's what's left. That's the essence of who we are, Buddha nature. That's who we are. We have it completely in common, all of us.
Und deshalb gründet, Sie setzen sich ein für die Freiheit von Tibet. Hat das auch damit zu tun, mit dieser Einsicht, dass wir alle sozusagen eins sind, dass dieses Mitgefühl nach außen tragen wollen, in die Welt tragen wollen?
And maybe we have to find a new language to talk about these things. Or keep them so simple and so direct and only allow the best of us to use a word like compassion or altruism.
Wie wollen
You
Sie
can't
das machen?
imagine someone like Trump using these words. I mean, it's just like, it's disgraceful. You know, when we came up with a poster of this, and there's His Holiness with the planet in his hands. And I suggested this because there's a famous teaching called liberation in the palm of your hands. Because it is. Your own freedom is in your hands. The more that you are able to manifest genuine kindness and love and compassion, wisdom comes along with it. They feed each other. A wisdom and a compassion coming together in the same instant of cognition, of feeling, of action. That's the best we can hope for as human beings. Well, we've seen many wars in our lifetime, and they don't end well. So maybe even just a little bit of wisdom can say that's not the way to go. The Buddhist way is you work on yourself. You don't blame anyone else for your experience in the world. You work on yourself. You work on your mind, you work on your heart. And if you have a lot of energy and focus, you can make really great progress towards freedom, liberation, being unstuck. And I think it leads to a certain kind of genuine compassion when you look around and you go, people are suffering. They don't have to, but they are. What can I do to kind of break the hallucination of this self-cherishing which leads to this craziness of us hurting each other when we are brothers and sisters? There's none of us that live on our own planet. We live on this planet together. There was some positive karma that allowed me to find Buddhism and to find a closeness as a student of the Dalai Lama and other really incredible teachers I've had, for sure. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I have great humility about that. You know, I don't think I'm special. I think I'm fortunate. And I do have a very privileged life. And I do have a sense that I need to pay back, should pay back, when I can. I think without having some understanding of the death process, it's very hard to have an understanding of the alive process. It puts everything in perspective. From the moment we're born, we're dying, right? I mean, everyone knows that, but you only know it intellectually. We don't know it deep inside, that this moment in this body, the body itself is changing all the time. This isn't the same body. It's not the same body that I walked in with. And this sense of mortality is a possibility, that everything can change, including the body. What remains is this continuity of consciousness, like in a dream.
Nochmal.
Every moment is reincarnation. That's it. When you really engage the idea of a self, you realize that every breath is a reincarnation. Every moment is completely fresh. Now, we don't see it that way because we take snapshots. We go, oh, here I am, snapshot. And we hold on to that. And we go, okay, that's reality. That's where I am. It's always going to be here. That's it. And then things change enough that, wait a minute, it's a different snapshot now. So you go, okay, forget that one. Boom, you take another snapshot. And you live within that one for a while. But we don't realize that it's changing like this. There never is a moment that you can grab and go, that's reality.
Das heißt, Sie schauen dem eigenen Tod komplett entspannt entgegen.
But there is going to be a time when you leave the body behind, for sure. And this idea of you, either you become frightened because there's this hard you. Now, what is the you? What is the me? What happens to me in this process? If you have a different idea of that me that is softer and can move in any direction, at the moment of death, it's the body goes, it's okay. This larger, expanded idea of me flows with things in a constant stream.
Ich bedanke mich bei Ihnen für diese vielen Snapshots. Es war sehr spannend, mit Ihnen zu sprechen, Richard G.